like to call to order tonight's meeting of the Plan and Zone Commission for our public hearing on today, Groundhog Day, February 2nd. We'll start with our public hearing. Roll call, please. Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Schneider.
Present.
Lammers.
She's excused.
Thank you. Med. Johnson.
Present.
Tallman present. Ingram.
Present.
Hepner.
Here.
Bransgard.
Here.
Reinhardt.
Here.
Manus.
Here.
And Garrington.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Our first case tonight will be, first and only case will be REZ 21-01 is a request of Dan Lorenzen on behalf of Rock Church Ministries, Inc. to rezone parcel P 1304-02C from S-OS Open Space District to R1 Single Family Residential District to allow for the construction of a church. Staff?
Okay. So up on the screen, we have a zoning map of the surrounding area with the subject property highlighted in yellow. This is the fourth parcel south of 46th Street. So you can see the property generally south of 46th Street is zoned for open space. Along the east lot line of the property is the railroad tracks, and generally land to the east of that is zoned for residential. Just north of 46th Street is the Public Works facility, with that being industrial zoning along with Tremont Avenue and that surrounding area. Here we have the land use map with the subject property highlighted there. Pretty standard with the zoning. You have open space, park and recreation south of 46th Street with general residential to the east of the railroad tracks. And then you have industrial north with some civic use with that Public Works facility. The map on your screen shows the surrounding vicinity with the subject property there in yellow. As you can see, this is a heavily wooded area with Goose Creek flowing to the south and Deer Creek running along the east lot line along the railroad tracks. And then you have the cemetery south of Goose Creek. And then some of those more industrial type users along Tremont Ave and north of 46th Street. So the purpose of the open space district is really intended to protect larger open space and public recreational facilities, both indoor and outdoor, as well as cemeteries. Larger regional open spaces may include both active as well as passive recreation areas. City staff recommended to the applicant, should they rezoning to an R1 single family residential district. This is the lowest density residential district and the lowest intensity district that would allow for a church to be constructed. So the purpose of the request is to construct a church on this site. The site's just over 3.5 acres. It's an undeveloped lot that's heavily wooded. So you could see up on the map in front of you, Goose Creek runs along the south with Deer Creek on the east lot line. And then that blue shaded area is a 100-year floodplain. So the most developable portion of this site would be that western half that's outside of the floodplain. And the topography of the site tends to drop off pretty significantly the further east you move. Platted with this parcel, so it's the fourth lot south of 46th Street. The lots north are all under separate ownership. And there's a 15-foot access easement that runs along the east boundary line up to the right-of-way of 46th Street. However, staff doesn't believe that this is really a feasible option for access, just given the location of the creek and the floodplain as well as the adjacent railroad. Up on the screen, we have the concept plan provided by the applicant. You can see the church with its parking lot is on the western portion of the site outside of the floodplain. This is really the only feasible location for building on the parcel. And then the applicant is showing a private drive that extends north onto 46th Street. So no traffic would be going across the tracks over to Eastern. So the private drive crosses property that's not owned by the applicant. So staff will require a written agreement with adjacent property owners prior to P&Z consideration. And then this concept plan is subject to change through the development process. Here are a couple of renderings of what the church could potentially look like on that wood lot. In terms of public input, a sign was not placed on the property just due to weather conditions and general access. Notices were sent to property owners within 200 feet of the rezoning, reminding them of tonight's public hearing. Staff have not received any written comment regarding this rezoning. And then a public hearing notice was also published in the Quad City Times. In terms of staff recommendation, a formal recommendation will be provided at the next Plan and Zone Commission meeting on February 16th.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioners, any questions of staff before we listen to the petitioner? Commissioner Tallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, can you go back to the, I guess the one showing the concept of that one will work just fine. And maybe I'm jumping the gun here. This might be something that's going to be brought up at the technical review between now and our next meeting to see this. But with these three lots not fronting a public street and this proposed private drive, will it be encouraged to maybe get together with all the property owners and look at maybe platting this into a subdivision? Because and granted, I didn't do too much research, but it doesn't seem like it's a legal plat of record at all right now. Is that correct? Do we know?
I do believe it is. It was platted in 1946, and it provided that access easement along the east side of the property lines, which did provide access. Is it in conformance with our subdivision ordinance as it stands right now? No. But it is a legal non-conforming subdivided property.
Okay. And
But we would, before we would bring it back to you for consideration, we will require something in writing from the property owners that would have to have the private access easement for that road.
and that's great. I appreciate, we all appreciate that. My concern is whenever we talk about a private drive, and again, in my experience, typically what will happen is a private drive eventually is going to fail and the ownership will ask the city to take it over. Or will the city, again, and I may be jumping the gun here, will the city require that private drive to be built to the city specs as far as a typical street? Will it be the regular, I guess there won't be necessarily a right of way, but the street, the pavement width, curb to curb? Is there going to be sewer brought in? I guess, and again, I
Sure.
got the feeling.
A lot of that will come through on the technical review. No
Okay.
final decisions have been made at this point. I will say that there is sewer along both creek lines, about 30-inch on both directions. So sewer access won't be a problem. Other infrastructure is not there currently. So that is still something that is under technical review on what that would look like for access and whether or not we fundamentally want to encourage any other development in that area.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Any other commissioner questions or thoughts at this time, either virtually or present? Hearing none, would the petitioner like to step forward and explain your project?
You know, if they're online, Matt.
Second call for the petitioner.
It does not appear that they're online.
I struggle with this. It's been my recommendation in the past that if the petitioner doesn't feel they need to be here for the public hearing, I'd like to table this or make a motion to table this, or I would listen for a motion to table this.
So,
Commissioner Tallman?
so moved to table one cycle.
I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded for tabling. At this point, we will consider no more questions or statements. All those in favor, or would you like to do roll call?
We just do it. Okay.
All those in favor of a tabling, please signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign. Hearing none. Petition,
So the
petition,
public hearing continues next
or the
cycle.
public hearing, right, it'll come back to us next two weeks, roughly, February 16th.
16th.
Case REZ 21-01 has been tabled for one cycle. That would conclude our public hearing. We will move on to our regular meeting. Roll call, Commissioner Tallman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Schneider.
Here.
Lammers excused. Med. Johnson.
Present.
Tallman, present. Ingram.
Present.
Hepner.
Here.
Bransgard.
Here.
Reinhardt. Here. Manus.
Here.
And Garrington. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Report of city council activity.
One thing to note, the Park Place Apartments third edition was deleted from the city council's agenda, so that is not moving forward.
Thank you. Secretary's report.
Move report.
Secretary's report has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of how it's printed signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it will stay the same. Report of comp plan, anything new, Laura?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Zoning activity, we have 2 or 3 items. Commissioner Hepner will read those to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, we have ORD 20-02, request of Palmer College of Chiropractic to amend a section of the campus master plan bounded by East 11th Street and East 10th Street between Pershing Avenue and Perry Street from an athletic field to student housing in Ward 3. Staff recommends that the Plan and Zoning Commission forward case ORD 20-02 to City Council with a recommendation of approval with the following 3 findings, and I so move.
Second.
Case ORD 20-02 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Staff?
Okay. So just to remind everyone that this is a major modification to Palmer's already existing campus master plan. Here you see the boundary map, which is also a 500-foot notice area. We do have a larger notification area when it comes to modification of master plans. Here is the existing zoning around the area. The yellow area is the subject property. It is a mix of uses in that area from institutional with Palmer and Central, several mixed residential, commercial, and single and 2-family homes. The purpose of the request is to relocate student housing from their campus master plan from an area on Main Street between 7th and 8th Streets into this area. It has the same number of units and bed count, 115 unit, 139 bed count of student housing in an area that had been previously planned as an athletic field. So you see in the chart, the thresholds associated with minor and major modifications. An increase in intensity of use from an athletic field to student housing is what triggered that major modification. So a little bit closer, this is the area as it is currently planned. It is shown as a sports field. And here is their proposed use of that area right now. It would increase parking. I believe it's 46 parking spots on site, and also would have an increased and enhanced pedestrian corridor to the north of the subject property, connecting it to campus. This is the master plan with that modification incorporated. I know that parking came up at the public hearing, so I did include the parking plan that was submitted with the proposed modification. There is approximately 50 spaces provided with the modification, and in speaking with the petitioner, they've identified parking spots that would be dedicated to student housing specifically. Actually, it would be a net increase in parking for Palmer. Public input notices were sent to all property owners within 500 feet of the request, notifying both the neighborhood meeting and public hearing. Neighborhood meeting was held on January 11th, and over 20 people were in attendance. Public hearing notice was published in the Quad City Times, and we have received no written comments. Staff's recommendation is to forward case ORD 20-02 with the following findings. The modification is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The modification meets the intent of the institutional campus district, and there's sufficient parking has been identified for the student housing.
Thank you, Laura. Would the commission have any questions at this time? Seeing none, would the petitioner like to step forward and review your project for us again?
I believe Jason Holdorf is connected virtually.
Yeah, I believe he is. Let me. Yep, yep,
okay?
we hear you.
All right. Sounds good. So yeah, appreciate the opportunity. I wanted to address just a couple of the items that had come up at the last meeting. If you want to go to that first slide there. All right, so real quick, just kind of a quick introduction to what I'm going to cover here. We're going to show you a little bit of a blowout view showing the entire Northeast campus parking plan, because I think Commissioner Garrington and others had some questions with regards to the parking specifics for this, for the new student housing. Secondly, then as part of that, we'll show you where the commuter parking would then be moved to. We can just show you real quick the two different detailed site plans. And then finally, we do actually have some building renderings and courtyard renderings and some views kind of looking over the athletic field that we can share with you tonight as well that have been a little bit further developed. We'll go to the next slide. So this is showing a kind of a blowout. The area in red is the new student housing, again, which I believe has 115 rooms, 139 beds. And the new, just to the east of that in the blue, it shows the new housing lot. That's what Lauren referred to as having approximately 48 parking stalls there. That will go with the project. Then the next lot to the south of that, which does have a direct connection down to it, is existing lot L. That, as you look to the left, it has 83 stalls. Those would be permitted to just the student housing. Those who are living in the student housing would have access to those and would be given a specific parking pass for that lot. And then lot K would be the next one. That lot has 61 additional stalls. And then also lot F up to the northwest So whoever is living in the student housing would be assigned a specific spot in the new housing lot, Lot L, and Lot K, which would then make up for the required stalls per the city ordinance, as well as obviously Palmer will monitor it from a demand perspective. They would be surprised if there's 173 needs for that building, but showing that we do have room for the 173 from those lots that would be adjacent to the facility. With that being the case, some of the other students do park in lots K right now. And if you want to go to the next slide. And then this is showing the lot M, which would be south of Central High School. And this would be where those individuals would be considered a commuter lot then for the students. And then this is a very non-utilized lot. And it does work very well for commuter students as well, because the Palmer campus kind of pointed to there, and the arrows are where a lot of their classes would be as well. So then those individuals would be given a pass into the commuter lot here as Lot M. Just kind of rehashing the project as a whole are the next two slides. So now north is to your left. Oops, that'll be fine too. We can take.
I can go back.
Okay, there you go. That's fine. There in purple is the new student housing facing out towards Perry Street, which would be, so north is to your left now, and then showing the athletic field up on the northeast corner there. And that's showing you the 11th Street corridor, doing a pedestrian improvement and making sure that there's access for the fire lane through there. And the next three are going to be some renderings. So this is looking into the courtyard area from Perry Street, looking into kind of the middle of these new student housing facilities, kind of giving you a little bit of an idea as to what they're looking at for some of the amenities of the courtyard area. This will be looking from the west to the east. This is just moving up the street to the north, just a little bit from where we were previously. And this will be looking at Perry Street, looking back towards that 11th Street new improved pedestrian corridor. Kind of looking back from the northwest towards the student housing, looking southeast. And then this would be up at the intersection of 12th and Pershing, kind of up in the far northeast corner of the project, looking back to the southwest, kind of at the athletic field, and kind of giving you a little bit of an idea of what that new campus buffer would be. So just wanted to share a little bit of some of the development in the kind of the renderings and such to give you a little bit better feel for what that might look like, and we'll be here to answer any further questions you might have.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Commissioners, any comments at this time? Commissioner Schneider.
Just wondering, what is the on-street parking like? Is that permitted? Is that open? Is that free? The streets that are adjacent?
Ryan Schatt, do you know? I do believe it is open parking. I don't believe it's permitted, but we can check before. Brian?
Sorry, I got a little cut on mute here. Yes, it is open parking.
Thank you. Commissioner Manus.
Thank you. I wondered, what is the height of these buildings? I'm just curious.
Greg, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. I'm Greg Gowie, Studio 483 Architects, and we're in charge of the design of the buildings. The buildings are 4 stories tall. Any other information that I can share, the fence that's going around the recreational field is 8 foot tall, and it's more of an iron fence with the brick piers like we've been showing.
Do you know the height in feet of the 4-story building?
Each floor is 11 foot floor to floor, so times 4 is 44 feet.
Okay. Is there a basement also?
No basement.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Manus. Any commissioners virtually have any questions? Hearing none, final call before I open it up to the public. Would anybody in the audience like to speak in favor or in opposition to this project? Please step forward and identify yourself. Seeing none, final call. Final call for commissioner questions. Seeing none, roll call, please. Wait a second. If you have a statement, you can step forward.
I'm sorry, what?
Do you have a statement about this project that you'd like to step forward and speak?
Right, yeah.
Please come up to the podium.
I've been in contact with them.
Gary, are you speaking more about the public right-of-way or about the student housing itself?
Right. I have the two buildings that are just.
Sir, you need to come up to the podium so you can be recorded.
Don't do to me. Oh. I have the two buildings that are north.
Could you please identify yourself?
Oh, my name is Gary Shanebeck.
Okay.
I'm the property owners of 208 East 11th
Okay,
and 1111 Perry.
thank you.
They're the two buildings that are north of 11th Street. My concern with everybody is all along, I have talked to Palmer yesterday, and I still have to meet him. I have 17 units total there, and right now, with everything that they're doing, we have no parking whatsoever in my buildings. They used to park on 11th Street and Perry, and then I have 4 parkings in back of my buildings. So all of a sudden, now, with taking 11th Street out and building the way they want it.
At this time, we've got a separate petition for the vacation of 11th Street. Can we address that then? This is just for the actual building itself.
Yep, we had to divide them into two, Gary. So they're talking about specifically the student housing right now.
Oh, okay,
And then we will
I'm
be.
sorry, yeah.
It'll come up here in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions at this time? Seeing none, roll call, please. Commissioner Tallman?
Schneider,
Yes.
Med? Johnson,
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Hepner,
Yes.
Bransgard,
Yes.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Manus,
Yes.
and Garrington.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, the next case, ROW 20-02, being the request of Palmer College of Chiropractic to vacate East 11th Street between Perry Street and Pershing Avenue and portions of alley in blocks 89 and 96 of Leclerc's 8th edition, 3rd Ward. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to table the discussion on the alley in block 96 of Leclerc's 8th edition.
We have a motion on the floor to table block 96. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that for one cycle?
It is.
You okay with that, Commissioner Tallman? Yes. At this time, we'll take a vote on tabling block 96 as proposed by Commissioner Hepner. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Same call. Hearing none, it will be tabled for one cycle. Could you continue, Commissioner Hepner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends the City and Planning and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings for the East 11th Street and the alley in Block 89 of Leclerc's 8th edition in case ROW 20-02 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the 2 listed conditions, and I so move.
Second.
Case ROW 20-02 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Laura?
So on this map on the screen, you can see the 3 areas that were requested to be vacated by Palmer College of Chiropractic. The red is East 11th Street from Pershing to Perry. The alley in block 89 is here in this kind of teal color, and it is the L-shaped vacation of part of an alley. And then the block 96 alley is in the darker blue on the north side of 11th Street between 11th and 12th. The purpose of the right-of-way vacation is to do a couple things. One is to facilitate the student housing that was just brought before you under the major modification. That would be the vacation of the alley on block 89 and the vacation of East 11th Street to help facilitate that. The vacation of the alley on block 96 is to facilitate the development of an athletic field. A little bit of background, East 11th Street is designated a historic brick street. The Historic Preservation Commission recommended a conditional approval on removing that street from the historic brick street list August 8th of 2017. The conditions were incorporated into the overall rezoning of the Palmer campus into an institutional campus rezoning. The conditions that apply specifically to the right-of-way vacations is that Palmer formally vacates or abandons the public streets and alleys depicted in their land use plan. And then specifically for East 11th Street, and when it's vacated, that it be turned, that they provide a pedestrian walkway between Perry and Pershing in the near vicinity of where East 11th Street currently is, and that they utilize some of the historic brick markers and do historical markings as part of that project. That is their intent to move forward with. Public input, we incorporated the notice that was done for the major modifications, so we actually exceeded the requirement of the 200 feet specifically for the right-of-way vacation request. And we also had that part of the neighborhood meeting on January 11th, where there were 20 people in attendance. Public hearing notice was published in the Quad City Times with no written protests. We did have conversations with one property owner. Again, here is the the overall campus master plan. You can see depicting the athletic field to the north where the alley would be, and then the alley vacation would be required for the student housing. Once again, here's how the student housing works, and then 11th Street would be the enhanced campus corridor. In the proposal, Palmer has stated that they would provide ingress and egress easements to the property owners that would not have full alley circulation. That would be required to be part of a subdivision when they do so in the future. We did, in our technical review, discover that there is existing infrastructure in the alleys as well as water main on East 11th. Palmer's discussions with the utilities, they are able to vacate the utilities in block 89 and as they are no longer needed. However, there hasn't been a final plan determined for block 96 yet, which is why staff had recommended tabling it until that decision's been made. The water main along East 11th Street, it's staff's determination that an easement for access and maintenance is sufficient for that utility. So the findings are that the proposed rights-of-way vacation that do move forward for East 11th Street and the alley in block 89 would not impact adjacent property owners with the proposed ingress and egress easements, and that utilities would be preserved through the easements during the subdivision process. The conditions are to do so with the easements for the preservation and maintenance of utilities within East 11th Street and the ingress egress easements. That is all I have.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioners, any questions? Seeing none, would the petitioner like to add any additional comments?
Is Jason still connected?
Jason, do you have anything you'd like to add?
The only thing I would add is, we did have a meeting with Gary there, I kind of mentioned on the two lots to the north of that, of the 11th Street at the, would that be the the southwest block, I guess, of 11th and Perry there. Gary has the next two buildings, to the north there. Letting know that he can still maintain the existing access he has. None of the parking is really going to change the way that it is. But otherwise, I don't think I have anything further on the, we have had some preliminary conversations with Mid-American, and yes, we're getting close to having a plan in place such that we can bring that forward there for the next meeting on the utilities.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the commission? Seeing none, would anybody in the audience like to step forward and speak either in opposition or in favor of this? Please do so now.
Well, again,
Gary.
You need to come to the podium.
name again?
Sure.
Gary Shanebeck. I'm the owner of 208 East 11th, 1111 Perry Street. Again, I talked to Jason yesterday. I'm still concerned about, basically have no parking for my tenants, with the exception of on Perry Street. And again, when the weather is like it is now, we can't park there anyway. So they have talked to me about possibly having across the street parking, but I'm concerned. I'd like to talk to Palmer and Jason. I'd like to find some way to get parking on the side of my building on the east side. So I'm not by any means unhappy with what Palmer wants to do, but I am concerned about where my renters are gonna park their cars.
And again, the 11th Street portion of this has been tabled, so we're not even voting on that tonight.
Okay.
Bob, it's actually just the alley to the north.
Or
that's
the
been
alley,
tabled.
has
Yeah.
been tabled, correct. I misspoke.
So
So,
yeah, I guess where I'm at right now, I just need to get that Palmer basically together with me and give me a better idea where I'm gonna be able to park my people.
understand.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments from the audience? Any questions from commission? Final call.
Commissioner Garrington with a question?
Go ahead, Commissioner Garrington.
The parking behind the student housing, which will empty out into 11th Street. It's going to be a walkway. How are you separating the walkway from the parking? It actually becomes, part of 11th Street becomes a driveway to that parking, as I can tell from the what you've shown us. How are you separating the walkway from the driveway?
Sure, you bet. I can try to tackle that. So, yeah, Laura, if you want to go back to maybe the overall 2D site exhibit.
Yep.
Probably one slide prior to that or so.
Would this work for you, Jason?
Yeah, well, let's go one more. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Actually, in order for that student housing there just to the north, there will be no direct connection to 11th Street. Instead, the alley comes, getting rerouted from Perry Street along those buildings and then north, therefore providing access to the back of those buildings from the north side. If you want to go back maybe even one more slide there, Laura.
One more.
It might.
Do you want me to go to your parking plan? Would this work for you?
Sure, that would be fine, but I think we need to kind of zoom,
More,
problem is zooming in, yeah. So if you can,
let me know which one you want.
go
Sorry.
back one more.
One more,
Wait,
okay.
you are.
That one, okay.
I apologize. There
Sorry.
we go. Yep, stay right there. Great. All right, no problem. I'll try this, Commissioner Garrison. Along Perry Street there, which would be on the bottom side of that drawing, north is to your left. You kind of see the L-shaped gray area. So that would be the new alley. So Perry, they would enter or exit from Perry Street onto the one section of L heading to the east, and then it would turn north and go to 12th Street.
I didn't make myself clear. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry.
I'm looking at the student parking, to the east of the building.
I got you.
And it comes out onto 11th Street. Are we talking about 11th Street?
Yes, you're correct. Yep, I'm sorry.
Okay. And,
That is fine. I can answer that then. Yeah.
okay, so part of 11th, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry about that. So yes, part of that will be a drive to the parking lot so that the students or whoever are able to access that parking lot. After that, there will be kind of a rollover curb, and there will be a change of pavement such that makes it appear more as if it's a pedestrian corridor area, and therefore the drive would end at that location. Now, the fire truck, it's going to have a rollover curb because we do have to provide access for the fire department to be able to get through there. But it will have the appearance of not. It will have the appearance of being a pedestrian corridor that would not be friendly to drive through, and there will be. So we're kind of doing it with different pavement types, with a rollover curb in that area, such that it would direct all the turning traffic with signage into the parking lot, and that would be the only option.
I was a little worried about safety of the people walking and the cars at the same time.
Yep, understand, and it is a delicate balance there. We're trying to appease the fire department and get them access, but yet at the same time, with some of the renderings and such, we'll make it as such that it will definitely not be inviting for cars to make their way through that area. But yeah, it's a good point. Thank you.
Hey, Jason, if I can help, this is Greg Gowie. All along that corridor, which is now to be a pedestrian walkway, there are sidewalks on both sides of the brick path that's to be the pedestrian walkway. So we not only, in the brick path adjacent to the building, have the access for the fire trucks, but on each side of that, there is a sidewalk in the approximate location of the existing city sidewalk. So Steve, there is going to be an opportunity to separate the potential traffic on the east side where the students are turning into the parking. So there'll be a sidewalk on both sides of it.
Okay.
Does that help?
That helps. I was a little worried about them walking down the middle of the brick and having a car turning into the parking at the same time.
Yeah, the challenge is it's going to be pedestrian, but we also have a sidewalk. They can walk on the street regardless, even now. So the intent was to provide a sidewalk on both sides with the hope that the pedestrian access are going to be using the sidewalk on that end of the property.
Will the, west side of 11th Street be blocked off with anything to keep vehicles from coming through?
Jason mentioned a rollover curb because we still need to provide a fire truck emergency access 24 hours a day.
Was there? Okay.
Does that satisfy you, Commissioner Garrington?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions at this time?
Mr. Chairman, this is Ned. I have a question on the vacation piece of this.
Excuse me, I couldn't understand you.
It's Commissioner Meddy has a question on the vacation.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I must be far away here. I'm not sure who to address this to. I don't know if it's the basin or the citizen area or staff, but is there any possible resolution for this issue? Sounds like we're still talking about it, and we're going to try to get together with Palmer and Jason, but we're going to vote on it tonight. What's the possible resolution?
So it's staff interpretation that it's really more of a civil discussion between Palmer and the property owner. The Plan and Zone Commission's purview here is to determine whether or not it is comfortable with removing its status as a public right-of-way. And then later on in the process, there will be conveyance of the city property. That's handled through the legal department, and then it's city council's decision on that actual handing over of that property. Does that help answer your question?
Well, I think it does. It sounded a little legal to me. I think basically we don't know if it can be resolved, but then it's not our purview, it sounds like.
Correct.
Is that all? Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, roll call, please. Commissioner Tallman?
Med? Johnson?
Yes.
Tallman, yes. Hepner?
Yes.
Bransgard?
Yes.
Reinhardt?
Yes.
Manus?
Yes.
Garrington?
Yes.
And Schneider.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Commissioner Hefner?
Final case this evening, Mr. Chairman, REZ 20-09, request of S.J. Russell, L.C., on behalf of Sophie Foster Revocable Trust to rezone the property located at 4607 East 53rd Street to C2 Corridor Commercial District and R-MF Multifamily Residential District. The purpose of the rezoning is to lift the existing land use and development restrictions on the property, adjust the commercial zoning boundary, and allow for townhouse and multifamily development, 6th Ward. Staff recommend case REZ 20-09 be forwarded to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, subject to the 4 listed findings and 10 conditions, and I so move.
Second.
Case number REZ 20-09 has been moved and seconded for discussion. Commissioner
Mr. Chairman, I
Tallman?
will be abstaining from this case and have asked Commissioner Manus to handle the roll call duties.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman. Staff? Matt?
Before you on the screen is the zoning map showing the subject parcel outlined in black. This parcel is just shy of 38 acres of land. As you could see, it straddles the city limits. So just east of the boundary of the property is the city of Bettendorf. It's located on 53rd Street. So that red portion, the northern portion of the property is zone C2, which is a corridor commercial district. Directly across the road is commercial office park. And then the property is surrounded by single family residential in both the city of Davenport as well as the city of Bettendorf. Before you is the land use map. The northern portion of the property is shown for regional commercial, with that southern portion being residential general. So this is compatible with the general character of the 53rd Street corridor, which is largely commercial along 53rd Street as well as Utica Ridge. And then that residential general is consistent with the single-family neighborhoods to the west, south, and east. So part of this rezoning petition would require an amendment to the land use map to straighten the boundary of the property to reflect the proposed zoning district layout. This map shows the vicinity of the area with the subject property highlighted in yellow. So directly north is office and business park. In the city of Bettendorf, there's medical offices just north of 53rd. Single family residential to the west, south, and east in both the city of Davenport as well as the city of Bettendorf. And then the city of Bettendorf does have some commercial south of 53rd, which includes a bank, restaurants, and a gas station. So the northern portion of the property is currently zone C2, and it would stay under that zoning district. However, the existing land use and development restrictions would be lifted. The C2 district is really intended for commercial corridors that are primarily oriented towards a mix of retail, personal service, and office uses along major roadways. Currently, as it sits, the southern portion of the property is zoned R4, which is single-family and two-family residential district. The zoning district serves just that, single and two-family residential neighborhoods. However, the R4 district can also be a transitional district between lower density neighborhoods and then more intense commercial districts. The applicant's proposing to rezone the southern portion of the property to RMF multifamily residential district. This district really accommodates higher density residential neighborhoods. So this includes semi-detached dwellings, two-family dwellings, townhomes, and then multifamily. It's important to note that the RMF district does not permit single-family dwellings. So the purpose of the rezoning petition really is to lift the existing land use and development restrictions on the site, to adjust the commercial zoning boundary, and to allow for townhouse and multifamily development. So the site is currently undeveloped. It's being used for agriculture as it sits today. It's just shy of 38 acres of land. So in 2011, the property was rezoned as part of a planned development district. The Plan and Zoning Commission placed development restrictions to mitigate some of the potential impacts to the surrounding residential neighborhoods. The development of this property never occurred. However, those zoning restrictions from 2011 remain in place. Before you is a revised concept plan from the last January meeting that we saw, and this is to reflect some of the interaction between city staff and the applicant. City staff also worked with the city of Bettendorf to address some of their concerns for the manner of which the site would develop. So that northern portion remains fairly similar to the first time through. It is shown for commercial with site access lining up with Lakeview Parkway directly north of 53rd. And then there would be a second ingress egress further to the east on the property. There would be a main north-south road connection that would line up with Lakeview Parkway and continue south through the site through the residential, eventually connecting to Eastbury Estates Drive. The kind of middle third of the property, or the northern portion of the residential, would be a townhouse rental development. And then just south of there would be owner-occupied multifamily. In terms of public input, city staff sent notices to owners within 200 feet of the request, notifying them of a neighborhood meeting as well as the January 19th public hearing. The neighborhood meeting was held on January 7th. We had approximately 40 people attend this meeting to express concern over the proposed development. Comments from adjacent neighbors were generally opposed to the rezoning. Public hearing was also published in the Quad City Times. So since the Plan and Zone Commission public hearing in January, city staff has received numerous protest petitions from the abutting property owners of the single-family residential neighborhoods in both Davenport and Bettendorf. So on the map before you, all the properties in blue are homeowners which have submitted protest petitions. So the protest petitions count towards the city council approval process. So staff has received 32.3% would be the current protest rate. So under a traditional rezoning, they're approved by city council with a simple majority vote. The protest rate exceeds 20%, which it does in this case. The city council vote for approval would be a 3/4 vote of city council. Along with the protest petitions, some of the letters from surrounding property owners listed really the following concerns. A major theme was the impact to property values, traffic, not only on 53rd Street, but how that would impact the residential roads, the density of the multifamily, and we saw the neighborhood express a preference for single-family housing on this site, as well as building height, and then concerns with light and noise pollution, more so with the commercial component of the project. There also were concerns about the topography of the site and how stormwater would be managed. There were concerns about the proposed detention ponds and some of the nuisances and maintenance issues associated with those. We also heard concerns about the school district capacity and then concerns about crime that might occur. City staff have continued to work with the applicant, creating some common ground, which include a 30-foot buffer along the east, west, and south property lines, as well as a height restriction of 35 feet on the residential component. So the surrounding neighborhoods, those zoning districts for the single family, their maximum height limit is 35 feet. Dan Dolan Homes has agreed that their residential portion of the project will comply with that 35-foot restriction. The RMF district does allow for up to 70 feet. So just to serve as a reminder, the zoning ordinance outlines a set of standards for the commission to either issue approval or denial of the petition. So those include consistency with the proposed amendment with the comprehensive plan, the compatibility of the zoning of nearby property and the established neighborhood character, the extent to which it impacts the public health, safety, and welfare of the city, the suitability of the property for which it is currently zoned, and the extent to which the proposed amendment creates nonconformities. So city staff have the following findings. The zoning map amendment is consistent with the land use plan for the city, which identifies the site for regional, commercial, and residential general. The proposed C2 district is compatible with the zoning of nearby property along 53rd Street. However, the proposed RMF residential district creates a higher density than the surrounding neighborhoods, which are zoned for single family and two family. Therefore, conditions requiring enhanced landscaping buffers and a reduction in the maximum building height are needed to mitigate some of these potential land use conflicts. Thirdly, special consideration must be given to the increased density of the proposed rezoning petition. Staff are recommending a traffic study is required to address increased traffic demand on the major arterial roadway as well as the local streets. Requiring a traffic signal on 53rd Street and a public north-south road through the development site will aid in mitigating some of these traffic concerns. And then finally, the rezoning of the property to C2 and RMF does not create any nonconformities under the current zoning ordinance. So the staff recommended conditions for this property. The first condition is to request that City Council pass a resolution amending the boundary between the regional commercial as well as the residential general land use boundaries in the long-range plan and future land use map. Second, a traffic study is required. In additional traffic safety measures may be required as the development occurs. Staff are recommending a north-south public street be required to connect Lakeview Parkway to Eastbury Estates Drive. A traffic signal shall be required at the intersection of Lakeview Parkway and East 53rd Street. A second ingress-egress point to East 53rd Street shall also be required, which is currently shown on the proposed concept plan. And then number 6, street connections to East 51st Street and Hawk Drive shall be prohibited, which was a condition worked out with the City of Bettendorf staff. The multipurpose trail shall be extended to the west property line There's currently a 10-foot multi-purpose trail in the city of Bettendorf, south of 53rd Street. So we're requesting that that trail be extended through the site. Number 8, a 20-foot setback on the eastern and westernmost property lines in the C2 zoning district shall be required where abutting commercial zoning districts to create an enhanced buffer between the two land uses. Number 9, a 30-foot buffer shall be required on the eastern, western, and southernmost property lines of the subject property where abutting residential districts. This is consistent with City of Bettendorf regulations, so we wanted to create continuity between the two municipalities. Finally, number 10, the height of structures in the RMF zoning district shall be no greater than 35 feet. So given those conditions and findings, staff recommends that the case be forwarded to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, subject to the listed findings and conditions.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioners, any questions at this time? Commissioner Manus?
Thank you. Matt, I am struggling just a little bit. I appreciate greatly the work that the staff and the developer have done together. This cooperation to start out with a plan, and I'm talking about the multifamily here, by reducing the height, by designing the access, all of the things that, and the buffers that would recognize that this is surrounded by single-family residents. I applaud the work that's been done. I'm still struggling a little bit though, because this is a pretty small parcel and it shows up as a spot of multiple family in a sea of single family. So I do understand the concerns of those surrounding neighbors, and I'm struggling a little bit about that. That is just a comment I wanted to make here. I think the technical things you've done are very good. If there were more undeveloped land, if this were a larger parcel, I think I wouldn't have any reservations, but I'm still thinking real hard about it, and I would like to see if there are some other comments from commission members.
Thank you. Any additional questions at this time before I have the petitioners step forward? Seeing none, would the petitioner's representative or representatives like to step up?
Kevin Dolan with Dolan Homes for the residential portion of the site.
And I'm Aaron Van Moore with Russell, representing the commercial development of this development.
So staff has taken you through the concept. We were, of course, up here last week talking about it. There have been a number of developments, so I would just changes to the concept that I'd just like to touch on. The biggest one being the north-south connection. I did, the last time we were here, we showed a connection from the east to Hawk Drive down to Eastbury, but no connection from the multifamily to the north. We have since been advised by city staff that any development in this site will be required to put in a north-south connection, and this serves as a public benefit in the form of increasing and enhancing connectivity in this section of the city. So this is a public good that is being provided at no cost to the city, and that's a cost that we're bearing. So I do think it's worth bringing up that this serves a greater part of the city than just the adjacent residents. This connectivity has been a problem here for a long time, so that's another benefit. Additionally, I have revised where our single-family subdivision abuts the existing housing. I've spoken with Alderman Jobgen and advised him that we would be willing to reduce our density to conform where we meet the existing housing to conform with the current zoning, the current R4 zoning. What that means is moving away from townhomes to single-family semi-detached or duplex style. So this is a type of housing that is currently allowed. I believe it's too late to change the application, but we are willing to conform to the current zoning where we meet the single-family. And the thing is, this is a transitional piece. So we're moving from single-family to very high-intensity commercial. And that requires some type of transition. And so what we're trying to do is solve that problem by providing for now semi-detached, duplex style, then townhomes, owner-occupied, then multifamily before finally arriving at the commercial district. So it's a transition that we feel makes sense. Anytime there's a development, you run into some form of NIMBYism, unfortunately, and we are doing everything we can to try to make concessions. We've cut the height of our buildings in half of what is allowed by the zoning. We've more than doubled. We're on the southwest corner of the site, or the entire south side of the site. It's not dimensioned there, but we're showing over 150-foot setback on the west side and double the required setback on the south and east. And again, reducing the density by moving towards duplex where we previously had townhomes. It is unfortunate that the system is set up the way it is because so many of the neighbors, and there was a vocal segment of folks that lived to the east off Hawk Drive and Dove Court that protested, and they stood up here and said the reason they were protesting was because they didn't want the traffic heading east on those roads. That's no longer going to be the case, of course, but those protests stand. So, we have continued to revise the concept to try to be as accommodating as possible, and we would appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Kevin. Would you care to speak?
Yeah, so as far as the commercial piece goes, again, we've had discussions with the staff and the city, and, we acknowledge that there will be a traffic light required at the intersection of Lakeview and 53rd, as well as a second ingress and egress off of 53rd. We have, as you see, will be, based on the city and staff's recommendations as far as road width, and as Kevin was saying, bringing the road all the way through the site is something, that we're working on, as well as addressing any other concerns that the city has mentioned. You can see, as far as the detention goes, we are trying to create a buffer so there's no light pollution that will be affecting the neighborhood. So again, from the commercial aspect, we're doing everything that we can to stay in the C2 zoning requirements and be a good neighbor, since we're neighbors to this property as well. So.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions at this time?
I've got a question. This is Commissioner Bransgard. For Mr. Dolan, can you describe, even though it was, I think, described in some of the paperwork, can you describe what the buffer on the south will entail? Are these, how soon will that buffer be fully grown and really blocking the view that the neighbors are concerned about?
Right, that's a great question. We're still working with city staff on exactly what that looks like, but I can tell you right now we are showing an increase of 100% from the required building setback. So their physical distance will be one aspect, but exactly what the landscaping package is, I don't have that answer yet, ma'am.
I can speak a little bit to that, Commissioner Bransgard. It would be the standard landscaping requirements of our buffer and our zoning code. We're not going to ask for anything over and beyond that.
Are you through, Commissioner Bransgard?
Well, maybe you could just elaborate a little bit more on that then, Laura. What does that entail? Because I want to kind of have more of a picture in my mind. I agree that the design has changed. It seems to be more accommodating, certainly, of the concerns, and I very much appreciate that. I'm just concerned, again, with the neighbors' concerns and how it might start to develop and when.
Sure. Matt's pulling up the actual way it's listed. It's alternating between more of a hedgerow style and overstory trees, but Matt's pulling it up right now. It's section 11-100, I think. Or did I go too far? Did you find it?
Yeah, so just a brief overview. So where multifamily abuts or commercial abuts single-family residential, the city does require buffer yards that are minimum 15 foot in width. So we're going beyond that in our conditions. This does include one shade or evergreen tree planted every 30 linear feet of buffer yard length. As well as including shrubs such as evergreen shrubs to be planted in space sufficiently to form a continuous linear hedgerow at plant maturity.
Does that answer your
I think
question?
that kind of gets the gist of it. There's smaller detailed requirements that
Okay, well, I appreciate
apply.
that explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Bransgard. Any additional questions?
Yes, my name is Lyle Anderson. I am a Bettendorf resident, sitting here with my father. He is a resident at 4658 East 49th Court in Davenport. That would be at the corner of East 49th and East Berry Estates. I do have a question, if I could go ahead and ask, please. Sorry to interject, I just kind of want to make sure I get it in.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So I am a Bettendorf resident, and my children go to Paul Morton Elementary School. That is due south on East Berry Estates of all the new plans. And there are a lot of children in that area, especially in the morning and in the 3:30 hours. So my question is, looking at this plan, and it is my father's concern as well, his grandchildren, lots of other kids. It looks like there were petitions to keep the traffic from going east out of Hawk and Dove. And I understand that you did try to make a plan to keep the traffic going north out on the 53rd. My concern is, what about the traffic that wishes to go south? That East Berry Estates path seems like it's going to be a little bit of a congestion, a bottleneck, and an easier access point for those that want to go south out of those neighborhoods. If I was a resident of that neighborhood, I would not want to go north onto 53rd, then east to 18 to get to go to the Bettendorf High School, because I assume that these neighborhoods are all going to be Bettendorf public schools, just like Paul Norton to the south and Grant Wood to the north on 53rd. So a little bit more to the point, what sort of mitigation is going to be put in place? Because this is a concern for both my father, for his grandchildren to play in this neighborhood, and for my kids that live in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do not contemplate any traffic controls in the residential neighborhood.
This is a problem.
Yeah, my name is Doug Anderson from the same address, and I'm just wondering, why can't they split it up, the residential, to where a third goes into 51st, a third goes into Hawk, and then a third will go south, because the traffic is just going to be unbelievable coming down East Berry Estate.
Would you like staff to
Please.
respond? So there were several considerations taken into the north-south connection between 53rd and East Berry Estates. Largely, it's driven by adding that additional connection north actually helps neighborhoods to the south of this development connect to a faster and shorter distance traffic light. It is the city's belief that traffic would be driven to the north to the major arterial 53rd Street road and not down to Crow Creek. And part of that, it would be designed as a local residential street. So it would deter those that would be using it as a pass-through. It would be narrower, and that curb helps with that as well. A larger concern for us is related to emergency services. Currently, this north-south road would shorten the fastest route for the fire station, for those responding from Fire Station 8, which is over by Costco, by just about 2/3 of a mile, and they don't have to make as many turns or weave through residential roads to access for emergency services. This is an added benefit to both this development as well as the properties to the south of it.
So my response would be, yes, it does sound like an added benefit to that fire station directly west on 53rd. I'm not suggesting eliminate that outlet. Our concern is that there is no outlet to the east or west from that neighborhood, though. You only have a north and a south. If I was a resident, and I am a resident in this direct area, I would not travel north to 53rd, where I am going to come in contact with 3 stoplights just to get to 18th, and then go south. I would go south through the neighborhood. Does that make sense? I would definitely go south through the neighborhood. And it is already a congestion point as a resident here in this area. People already do cut through from Crow Creek to East Berry State to 18th. They don't go through 2 stop signs on Crow Creek, then get to 18th and go north. There's only 1 stop sign that they need to confront, and then it's free flowing. It is already a congestion point, and now it's going to become even more of a congestion point by not having an east or a west outlet. And again, it is my children that are concerned and my father's grandchildren who is directly impacted by this because he is on the very northwest corner of East Berry State.
Also, the streets going down East Berry Estates aren't as wide as the streets in Bettendorf. And it's a real traffic problem when you got people parking on both sides. It's hard to get around. Right now, it's hard to get around. I can't imagine with the traffic you have planned to go through East Berry Estates, what it's going to be like. It's going to be unbelievable.
If I could, please, I can see our neighbor, Michael Ryan, is on the line. Sorry to put you on the spot, Michael.
Can we please leave public comment until after the commission, when the chair directs it?
Correct.
I just think that all three.
Can you please wait until it's public comment period? We're almost there. We're almost there.
We'll be able to come back to this?
Yes, we will come back to it.
Yes, we will. But at the same time, Laura, I have a question for you, Laura. Correct me if I'm wrong, was it not the request of the city of Bettendorf to eliminate those eastern connections? So
yes, it was. And the reason for that is because it was their belief, and City of Davenport staff believe it's correct, that if we leave the Hawk Drive access point, that the shortest path to the traffic light without doing the north-south connection, even with it, it would direct traffic disproportionately onto Hawk Drive and then over to 18th Street. So we took that very seriously, and we agree with them on that. And so this is a way to maintain some connectivity throughout the development while addressing that concern.
thank you, Laura. Commissioner Manus, do you have a question?
I was just going to ask Mr. Dolan, did you state that you would be further reducing the density on the very south of this property to match the existing R4 to the south?
Yes, ma'am. So where we had originally contemplated all of the lots being townhome style, maybe up to 6 homes in a row house style construction. That is not permitted under the current zoning of R4. However, duplex, so 2 homes attached with 1 common wall are, and we have committed that we would be willing to, wherever we meet the existing housing on the south, and then at the top of the cul-de-sac there, comply with what would be allowed under the R4, so that duplex style.
And just to clarify, that is also still single-family semi-detached is what we call that, and that is still allowed in the residential multifamily, so he would be able to do that with this rezoning request.
Does that change your configuration then, or is it the same number of units?
So the number of units went down slightly.
How many? Do you know?
I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Thanks for that answer.
Thank you,
I can say that the lot width grew, so that was the number for the reduction. That each lot grew by maybe 10 feet, something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Manis. Any additional questions?
So I have one more comment, if I may, sir.
Yes.
So obviously, we received all these protests and comments, which we have all reviewed and taken into heavy consideration, and is the reason why we keep coming back to revising our concept. One thing that has been failed to be mentioned during these public comments is how the additional development here will increase the tax base. And right now this property is only generating a couple $1,000s a year in taxes to the city of Davenport. Our conservative estimates are annually we'll bring in over $1 million additional dollars to the city of Davenport, which we view as a public good to the residents. That money can go to repairing streets or however the city sees fit, but it's just something that has been failed to be mentioned up to this point. And we think, we're listening to the public, but we also, think that this is a great benefit to the residents as well. So.
That's a great point. It's just one more public good, the increased revenue, the enhanced connectivity, growth in this section of the city, and then, of course, the new amenities, walkable amenities, which will certainly breathe some life into this part of town.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Commissioner Schneider.
Oh, sorry. I have one comment I wanted to make regarding the school capacity. I did hear from the Bettendorf superintendent today, and they would be able to accommodate the increased capacity within their school district.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioner Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a comment as well. And, one of the things that I think is important for our community is that there is a dire need for more housing, especially in this price range. And it's whether it's this project or others, I think it's something that we need to consider that, our community needs. So that's something to be considered as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Schneider. Commissioners virtually, do you have any additional questions at this time?
Commissioner Garrington, as I've listened, I haven't heard anyone with a problem of the north half it is simply on the south half that is where the housing is going to go. Haven't heard one single comment against. Maybe someone will, but so I've just noticed that we're hesitant, as Commissioner Manis said, just hesitant about the way it's going. There is a change, but I haven't seen any concept of what that change would look like. So I may be incorrect there, but go ahead.
Thank you.
Would you like me to?
Please.
So staff has been, part of the conditions, we did look at both the residential multifamily and the C2 zoning, and really the largest part of the C2 is related to traffic, so they're tied together. That's where those comments come into play. So we did take that into consideration. It does increase the intensity of the use from what is currently allowed with the conditions that are restricting the use as they lay right now. We are working with both developers. They have been amenable to do that. We also do think that the connectivity as with the north-south road allows the neighborhood to access more of those amenities more directly and in a walkable way, which is also important. So I wanted to make that clear. And then just a general note that anything related to stormwater management, light pollution, and noise pollution, we have city ordinances that they would be required to meet in that process.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioners, final call for questions at this time.
One more.
Commissioner Manus?
What is the height in the commercial area? Is that specified here? I know in the old plan it was limited.
So
Is it?
the C2 district allows 45, and I at this time, I do not see a need to restrict it below that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Manus. Any additional questions? Thank you, guys. I appreciate your comments. Before I open this up to comments from, well, the audience, it does not appear as though anybody is here to comment in person. Before I open it up to virtual comments, I want to remind everybody that we've already had the public hearing, and historically, our bylaws do not allow for additional comments prior to our vote. But if anybody has any new information that they would like to bring forward at this time, please identify yourself. But again, we've already had our public hearing. We've already heard about numerous concerns. I'm only looking for new concerns. Please identify yourself and make your comment known.
So my name is Michael Ryan. I'm at 4646 East 49th Court. One new argument that was brought up was that we're being accused of being NIMBYism. This is a new argument that was brought up, and I'm very offended by that. Asking the property owner to hold to the agreement that they made in 2011 is not NIMBYism. It's asking someone to honor their word. I was very offended by that, and I think it's a little bit disgusting. Further, I know we talked a lot about traffic, but I would like to encourage whoever launches the traffic study to consider more than just straight north of the property. Straight north of the property really isn't a traffic bottleneck, at least it isn't now. The real bottleneck comes when you get to Utica Ridge and over to 74 and even beyond that. I didn't read the whole traffic study that was done in 2008, but I did skim it enough to know that they didn't really explain how adding all this additional traffic, the study found that the road could support that additional traffic, but it didn't really go in to explain how it alleviated the problem that already exists. So I think it's important that whoever does the traffic study look at the holistic area and not just one specific area on it. They brought up the issue of taxes and how this development would bring in new development. If I extrapolate from my land valuation in my area that I have, while they may bring in $1 million in taxes estimated, by my extrapolation, if we did this all as residential 3, that would generate around $600,000. The other thing I want to talk about, and I apologize immensely for interrupting, but when someone brought up the fact that no one had talked about the commercial, well, this is a new thing apparently because I think the commercial is not keeping with the character of the surrounding property. Because north of it, we were talking about how that's office park. And now we're talking about C2, and when Russell came in and did their presentation, they were talking about going to 3 stories. One of the key agreements that we reached in 2011 was that we would limit, and the property owner agreed that development would be limited to 2 stories. It's just not really keeping in the character of going 3 stories. There's no other 3-story building in the close vicinity. People have referred to the ORA building as being 3 stories, but to the grade level, it's only 2 stories. It's only 3 stories if you count the walkout basement. There are, I know on the corner of 53rd and Utica, there are 2 3-story buildings, but those are very isolated and they're not part of really the neighborhood that we're talking about here. Also, going to the character compatibility, we're talking about doubling the density of the residential here, block after block after block. In the space of 3 blocks, or I'm sorry, in the space of 2 blocks, we go from 27 units to 118 units. This is not keeping with this is a wild transition to go that dense, that quick. And finally, the last thing I want to say here is that it's what the petitioners are asking for is for us to completely unwind the 2011 agreement. That compromise was made, everyone agreed to that, right? And they're asking us to just throw that out and not give any consideration back to us. We're looking, I appreciate that they're doing the buffer. I appreciate that Dolan, at least, is respecting the height restriction. But I think the biggest thing that the biggest concern that we've got about that 2011 agreement is the single-family detached dwelling that we were wanting. We were pushing for R3 in 2011, and we made that compromise to say, okay, I guess with these stipulations in place, I guess it's okay that we could go to R4. Now you want to throw out the stipulations and go to a even higher density. That is just, it's a bait and switch against the taxpayers of Davenport here. And I'm really disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
Chairman Ingram, can I make a point of clarification?
Absolutely.
I did want to clarify that at no point has Russell mentioned that they would have 3-story buildings. I do not believe that is their plan.
Do you concur with that, Russell? Thank you. Any additional questions or comments?
Hey, hello. I don't know if I'm getting muted or not, but during the public hearing that we had.
Excuse me, you need to identify yourself first.
This is Michael Ryan at 4646 East 49th Court, and at the public hearing that we had at, not in City Hall, but up at the Education Building, Russell specifically said that they were going to 3 stories. And I realize that that's hearsay and it's not admissible, but
Would you
I
please,
think the results.
please step forward, Caitlin?
Yeah, this is Liang Zhao.
Hold on.
So at the neighborhood meeting, we did say C2 has a 45-foot height restriction, but we didn't have any plans for any specific heights or any building types. So it's not our plan to do 3 stories, but we plan to fall within the C2 zoning guidelines. So while ORA is 2 stories, it is a large 2 stories. Tom probably knows this. So while 2 stories by definition mean a certain height, doesn't mean that they're, 3 stories may be 40 feet, and it also could be 2 stories at 40 feet. So but we did not say we're doing a 3-story building at that meeting.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to add that directly north is different zoning. It's zoned commercial office park. So it would be more in line with keeping up with the development that's happening on the south side of 53rd.
Correct. Thank you, Laura, for that clarification. Who else would like to speak briefly?
This is Liang Zha. I live at 4634 East 49th Court. So I agree with my neighbor, Michael Ryan, that when we were purchasing these properties as taxpayers, we were know in a certain way how this field will be developed to be single-family house. And then this big change would really is a conflict with what we were promised. And with this new potential street leading to 53rd, so I don't know if you have done this study on how many emergency traffic is there and what a real impact it can bring. I think it's mostly the way this road could be built is to benefit this business in the North Park and maybe this potential apartment buildings, multifamily buildings, but not the current residents. So this road is built at the expense of the interest of current residents. So you're claiming that there will be easier route and less traffic time. But have you surveyed, have you asked the people living here? Maybe that's the reason they choose to leave this place at first place, because they don't want easy access to 53rd. They don't want shortcut to the main street. They want this more isolated there. So the reason you're building this road is really to benefit business and multi-family house that your business plans about at the expenses of current residents. How do you consider them if they want this traffic? So another point is safety concern. So with this road, it would lead more traffic, which would potentially create more traffic accidents for this surrounding neighborhood. So this safety is not only from traffic, but also the uncertainty of the people who visit this business and who rent these multi-family houses. They are not long-term residents, and they are just temporarily staying here. So the background and are very diverse. It's kind of like you live close to hotel areas. Do you want to have a house next to a hotel when there will be all kinds of people and their guests staying? We don't know. This uncertainty brings this unsafety to this neighborhood. So that's safety concern, and this business plan to benefit this builder at the expenses of current residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Hearing none?
Yes, this is Doug Anderson again, 4658 East 49th Court. I understand what you're saying about, we already went through it before at the other meeting, but you did change the route. It's something new. And one exit out of the south of this residential is going to be a mess. Is there any way you can investigate the road or figure out a way that you can have at least 2 or 3 exits out of this south end?
Again, I will comment that this road arrangement was agreed to upon, pretty much driven by the city of Bettendorf and agreed to upon by the developer and by the city of Davenport. I question...
To the west is Davenport, and it is an exit on 51st. I don't know why you'd want one exit out of the south when you got so many complexes. There's so many residential houses over there. I don't understand that. I'm right on the corner of that Eastbury Estates. I'm going to get hammered. Me and all my neighbors going all the way up Eastbury Estates.
I understand your concerns, and I would highly recommend that you take it to our city council meetings. Our primary task as the Plan and Zone Commission is to determine proper land use, and your concerns about traffic and schools and that type of thing is more of a city council concern as opposed to us as a recommending body as to what land use should be in this 39 plus acres. So while I appreciate your concern, our primary aspect of this is to listen to your concerns, but at the same time, I highly recommend that you take that to Davenport City Council meetings.
Won't it be too late?
No, it will not be too late. Just so you understand, we are merely a recommending body. We listen to a lot of the concerns. We work with the city staff to put together a package that the city council can go through its 6-week process of review. That's really where I would highly recommend you bring your concerns as a citizen, as a neighbor, as an attendant of the school system of Bettendorf. That's really their primary concern. Our concern is to look at the land use, the layout of the land, the buildings on the land, what's commercial, what's residential, and take a package to the city to then discuss it with the neighbors.
Okay, I appreciate all the work you guys have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any additional questions before we take this to a vote? Final call? Roll call, please. Commissioner Manus.
Thank you. Schneider,
Yes.
Lammers is excused. Med.
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Tallman is abstaining. Ingram,
I don't vote.
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Hepner,
Yes.
Bransgard, Bransgard,
Yes.
Reinards,
Yes.
Manus, yes. Garrington,
Abstain.
Mr. Chairman, it carries.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Commissioner Manus? Looking ahead, we have, that was our, go ahead, Commissioner Hefner.
That's all I have this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Thank you.
you. We have no subdivision activity. We'll move on to future business.
We will have a subdivision at the next commission meeting, and then the carrying, or continuing of the Rock Church public hearing.
Correct.
That is it.
Thank you, Laura. Any additional communications or additional business?
I just have one small item, and I can email you out a little bit more information about it tomorrow, but we did enhance a tool for our zoning map online. You are now able to turn on and off zoning districts separately so that you can do a little bit more of a deep dive on where certain districts are based off of what uses you're looking to do. So I will forward you the link to the zoning map as well as a short how-to if you're interested, and feel free to share that with anyone that you might think is interested.
I appreciate that. We talked about that earlier today, and I thought that's pretty exciting, and look forward to taking a look at it, and I'd appreciate if you send it to all our commission. Thank you, Laura. Any additional thoughts, questions? Motion? Hold on. We're going to work it together. Yeah. No.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to adjourn.
It's been moved and seconded for adjournment. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, please enjoy the rest of your Groundhog Day and see you in a couple weeks. Thank you. We are adjourned.